The sharp crack of her palm across his cheek echoed through the private cabin like a gunshot. 10 minutes later, still tasting blood, he looked up from his phone and quietly said, "Fire them all." She thought she'd just taught a rude passenger a lesson. She never imagined the plane, and her heart, already belonged to him. If this story resonated with you, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The Gulfstream G700 sat gleaming under the private terminal lights at Teterboro, engines humming like a sleeping dragon. Inside, Captain Lauren Hayes stood at the galley counter counting the crystal glasses for the third time. Her manicured fingers trembled, just slightly, every time the metal clinked. She hated turbulence. Not the kind that rattled the fuselage. The kind that rattled her life. At 34, Lauren was the youngest senior captain Global Wings Charter had ever promoted. 6 years ago she'd been a wide-eyed flight attendant pouring champagne for men who never learned her name. Now she wore 4 stripes, commanded 6-figure charters, and still felt like an imposter every time she buttoned the double-breasted navy blazer. Tonight's client had booked the entire jet for a 1-hour hop to D.C. Manifest said only one passenger, Mr. K. Ellison. No first name. No company. Just a black Amex and a reputation for being difficult. Lauren smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her skirt and glanced at the boarding door. She needed this flight to be perfect. One more perfect flight and the board would finally give her the vice president title she'd bled for. Her mother's voice still lived in her head. "People like us don't get handed anything, baby girl. We take it, clean, fast, and with a smile." Across the tarmac, inside the FBO lounge, Khalil Ellison stood at the window watching the same jet. 68 floors above Manhattan, he'd built an empire that owned 3 airlines, half the private terminals on the East Coast, and quietly, this very G700. He traveled under initials because the moment people saw Khalil Ellison on the manifest, the bowing began. Tonight he wanted none of it. He wanted to be invisible for 60 minutes. He tugged at the cuff of his charcoal Tom Ford suit, no tie, top button undone. At 41, his beard was more salt than pepper now, and the scar that sliced through his left eyebrow still pulled when he was angry. He was angry tonight. Not at the world. At himself. 17 years ago he'd promised his little sister he'd never fly commercial again after their mother died mid-flight on a budget carrier that didn't have a defibrillator on board. He'd kept that promise by buying every plane he stepped onto. But promises, he was learning, could become prisons. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. Board voted 6-5 to sell Global Wings Charter. Paperwork signed an hour ago. You now own the company that's about to fly you. Congratulations, or condolences. Khalil exhaled through his nose, slipped the phone into his pocket and walked toward the jet stairs. Lauren saw him coming, tall, broad-shouldered, moving like a man who didn't ask permission for the space he took up. The kind of passenger who made her shoulders tense. She plastered on the smile she'd perfected in economy class a decade ago. "Mr. Ellison, good evening. Welcome aboard." She extended her hand for the customary boarding handshake. He looked at her hand, then at her eyes, deep brown, guarded, beautiful in the way knives can be beautiful, and took it. His grip was warm, firm, brief. "Thank you, Captain." He glanced at her wings. "Hayes." The way he said her name felt like he'd tasted it first. She pulled back too quickly. "We'll have you in D.C. in 48 minutes, sir. Please make yourself comfortable." Khalil stepped past her into the cabin. 12 creamy leather seats, burled walnut, fresh orchids. He ran a finger along the seam of the headrest and almost smiled. He'd personally approved this interior fit-out 6 months ago. No one at Global Wings knew the mysterious new owner ever flew his own planes. Lauren sealed the door, gave the thumbs up to the ground crew and disappeared into the cockpit. The co-pilot, Javier, raised an eyebrow. "Client seems chill." Lauren strapped in. "Clients are never chill. They just wait until 30,000 feet to show you who they really are." Engines spooled. The jet taxied. In the cabin, Khalil poured 2 fingers of Yamazaki whiskey he didn't want, stared out at the runway lights blurring past, and felt the old ache settle in his chest. He hated heights. Hated flying. Hated that the only way he could keep the promise to his dead sister was to own the sky he was terrified of. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Lauren's voice floated through the cabin, smooth and professional. "Ladies and gentlemen, well gentlemen, we're cruising at 39,000 feet. Skies are clear. Sit back and relax." Khalil closed his eyes. 60 minutes. Just 60 minutes and he'd be on the ground again. He never saw her coming. Lauren stepped out of the cockpit to do her post-takeoff check, something she never delegated on single-passenger legs. She found him standing in the galley back to her, staring at the coffee machine like it had insulted his mother. "Sir, please return to your seat. We're experiencing some." He turned too fast. The whiskey glass slipped from his hand, shattered on the hardwood floor, amber liquid splashing across her polished black pumps. Time slowed. Lauren stared at the stain spreading over her shoes, then up at him. Something inside her snapped. The exhaustion, the pressure, the lifetime of being invisible to men in expensive suits who treated the sky like their living room. Before her brain caught up with her body, her right hand flew. Crack. The slap was loud enough to rattle the crystal in the rack. Khalil's head snapped sideways. The scar on his eyebrow split open. A bead of blood appeared. Lauren's palm burned. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She had just assaulted a passenger. On her own airline. At 39,000 feet. Khalil touched his cheek, looked at the blood on his fingertips, and met her eyes. Neither of them moved. Somewhere in the distance, the seatbelt sign dinged back on. Turbulence ahead. Have you ever had a moment where one split-second reaction changed everything? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. The cabin lights flickered once as the jet punched through a thin veil of cloud. The turbulence was mild, but the silence that followed the slap was cataclysmic. Lauren's hand still hovered in the air, trembling like a gun that had just fired its last round. The sting in her palm felt righteous for exactly 2 seconds. Then horror flooded in. Khalil didn't flinch again. He simply stared at her, the bead of blood now a thin red line sliding down the side of his face. His eyes, dark, unreadable, ancient, locked onto hers with a stillness that made the cabin feel suddenly too small. Lauren's voice came out cracked and small. I'm so sorry, sir. That was assault, he finished for her low and calm. Federal offense. Up to 20 years. The words hit her like ice water. 20 years. Her wings gone. Her mother's voice proud for once, then ashamed forever. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. Khalil reached past her, slowly, deliberately, and pulled a linen napkin from the galley drawer. He pressed it to his cheek, never breaking eye contact. Lauren finally found her legs. She took one step back, then another, until the edge of the credenza dug into her spine. I don't know what came over me. You startled me and the glass. I startled you? His voice was velvet over steel. Captain Hayes, I've been startled by men with guns. That was not startling. That was hatred. The word landed between them like a body. Hatred. Lauren's chest caved in. No. God, no. I'm not. I don't. But she stopped because part of her wondered if he was right. She had spent 15 years smiling while men twice her age called her sweetheart, pinched her, talked over her, demoted her, doubted her. One drop of whiskey on her shoe and she'd become the very monster she hated. Khalil studied her the way a chess player studies a board after an unexpected move. He saw the tremor in her knees, the way her pilot's cap had slipped slightly askew, revealing a thin braid at her temple. He saw the terror underneath the pride. He took one step closer. Lauren's breath hitched. She braced for shouting, for threats, for the call button that would end her life. Instead, he spoke so softly she almost missed it over the engines. Do you know who I am, Captain? She swallowed. You're Mr. Ellison. My passenger. That's not what I asked. He pulled his phone from his pocket with the same hand holding the blood-stained napkin. One thumb swipe. He turned the screen toward her. An email. Subject line. Closing, Global Wings Charter Acquisition. From Legal Department, Allison Holdings. Sent, 46 minutes ago. At the bottom in bold. New parent company, Allison Aviation Group. Effective immediately. All personnel to report to Interim CEO K. Allison. Lauren read it once. Twice. The cabin tilted harder than any turbulence ever could. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Khalil let the silence do its work. Then he said almost gently, I own this airplane, Captain Hayes. I own the company you work for. I own the uniform you're wearing. He paused, tilting his head. And 10 minutes from now, I'm going to own the unemployment forms of every single person who let you believe you could put your hands on another human being and walk away from it. Lauren's knees buckled. She caught herself on the counter. Khalil tapped once on his phone. A text fired off. To Executive Board, Global Wings. Message. Effective immediately, terminate the entire senior cabin crew attached to tail number N898KE. Clear out their lockers by morning. No severance. No references. Sent. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. Lauren heard the faint whoosh of the message sending. It sounded exactly like a guillotine falling. Her voice cracked into a whisper. You can't, they have families. Some of them have been with the company for 20 years, he supplied. Funny. That's how long you just told me I could go to prison for. He stepped closer again. Close enough that she smelled cedar and whiskey and the metallic trace of his blood. Lauren's eyes filled hot, sudden, traitorous tears. She hated crying in front of anyone, especially men who already thought she didn't belong in the left seat. Khalil saw the tears and something shifted behind his eyes, something almost human. He reached past her again, this time opening the small medical kit mounted on the bulkhead. He pulled out an alcohol wipe, tore it open with his teeth and pressed it to his own cheek. The sting made him hiss, but he didn't look away from her. Lauren's voice came out raw. Why are you being kind to yourself and cruel to everyone else? The question surprised them both. Khalil's hand paused midair. For the first time the mask slipped. He looked suddenly impossibly tired. Because the last time someone I loved got on a plane that didn't belong to me, he said, voice rough, they brought her back in a box. The confession hung between them like smoke. Lauren's tears spilled over. The seatbelt sign dinged again, more turbulence coming. But neither of them moved. Tell me in the comments. When was the last time you realized, in one brutal second, that you just ruined everything? Be brave. Share it. I'm reading every word. Act to his seat, sat and clicked the seatbelt with deliberate calm. Lauren disappeared into the cockpit and pulled the door shut behind her. Through the small window she saw him staring straight ahead, jaw tight, blood crusted on his cheek. Javier glanced over. Everything okay back there? No, she whispered, strapping in. But it will be. She clicked the PA, ladies and gentlemen, well gentlemen, moderate turbulence for the next 10 minutes. Remain seated. Then, under her breath, so only Javier could hear, and pray I still have a job when we land. The jet bucked hard, throwing Lauren sideways into the galley counter. The seatbelt sign screamed its two-tone chime. She barely felt the bruise blooming on her hip. All she could hear was the echo of his last sentence. They brought her back in a box. Khalil steadied himself against the bulkhead, eyes still on her, waiting for her to crumble completely. She didn't. Something ignited behind her tears. Fury, survival, the same stubborn fire that had carried a little black girl from a Southside Chicago walk-up all the way to a Gulfstream cockpit. Lauren straightened, wiped her face with the heel of her hand, and met his stare head-on. You want to fire them? Her voice was hoarse but steady. Fine. Fire me first. I'm the one who hit you. Khalil's eyebrow lifted. You think this is about rank? About who takes the fall. It's about decency, she snapped. 12 people are about to lose everything because I lost my mind for 3 seconds. You want blood? Take mine. He almost smiled. Almost. Captain Hayes, I don't want blood. I want accountability. And right now your entire company thinks passengers are punching bags. That's not true and you know it. Do I? He tilted his head. Tell me, how many times have your crew laughed about, entitled, passengers behind the cockpit door? How many eye rolls, how many snide comments on the crew chat? I've seen the screenshots. Lauren flinched. There was a WhatsApp group. Everyone had one. Sometimes the jokes got ugly after a long day. She swallowed. I'll shut it down. I'll apologize publicly. I'll pay for the dry cleaning of every suit I've ever looked at wrong. Whatever you want. Just don't punish them for my hands. The plane dropped 50 feet in a pocket of clear air turbulence. The overhead bins rattled. Somewhere aft, a lone coffee cup rolled across the floor and shattered. Khalil didn't blink. You still don't get it? This isn't about tonight. This is about a culture I just paid 9 figures to inherit. I'm cleaning house. Lauren stepped forward until they were inches apart. The cabin lights painted harsh shadows across both their faces. Then start with me, she said, voice shaking with rage and something dangerously close to pleading. I'm the culture. I set the tone. If someone's going to be the example, let it be the captain who forgot she was human. For a moment the only sound was the engines and the blood roaring in their ears. Then Khalil spoke, softer than the engines. You'd really fall on the sword for 12 people who probably gossip about how you slept your way into the left seat? The slap of his words hurt worse than her palm had hurt him. Lauren's chin lifted. Yes. Because some of them have kids with cancer. Because one just buried his wife. Because Maria in scheduling is 3 months from retirement and has no savings. I know their stories, Mr. Ellison. Do you? He went very still. She kept going, tears falling again but voice stronger. You own the plane. Congratulations. But you don't own their lives. And if you destroy them tonight, you'll have to look at me for the rest of yours knowing exactly what kind of man you chose to be at 39,000 feet. Silence stretched, thin and sharp as piano wire. Khalil's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. Lauren reached past him, grabbed the interphone and punched the code for the crew rest group text. Her thumbs flew. Everyone on tonight's manifest. Do not open any email from HR until we land. I'm handling this. I messed up. Not you. I love you all. Captain Hayes. She hit send before he could stop her. Khalil watched the message deliver, green checkmarks lighting up one by one. Something flickered across his face. Admiration, irritation, maybe both. You just committed insubordination against your new owner, he said quietly. Then fire me when we touch down, she answered. But until these wheels kiss runway, this is still my airplane. And I protect my people. Another jolt of turbulence. This time Khalil reached out instinctively, steadying her by the elbow so she didn't fall. Their eyes locked. His grip was warm. Too warm. Lauren pulled away like she'd been burned. In the cockpit, Javier's voice crackled over the intercom. Captain, we've got moderate chop ahead. Suggest we tighten up back there. Lauren pressed the reply button, never looking away from Khalil. Copy. Passenger is returning to his seat now. She pointed toward the leather chair. Sit down, Mr. Ellison. Buckle up. We're not done talking, but right now I have a plane to fly. For the first time all night, Khalil did exactly what she told him to do. He walked behind the door. Khalil pulled out his phone again. He opened the termination text he'd sent, thumb hovering over recall. He didn't press it. Not yet. Comment below right now. Would you sacrifice your entire career to save 12 other people's? Be honest. No judgment here. You there. The wheels kissed runway 1 at Reagan National with a soft chirp, right on the numbers. Lauren taxied like a woman driving to her own execution. Smooth, precise, no wasted motion. The tower frequency crackled. Global Wing 77, hold short of taxiway Juliet. Airport is closing in 15 minutes. Major winter storm inbound. No departures until at least 1,000 tomorrow. Lauren's stomach dropped harder than the landing gear. She clicked the mic. Copy, tower. We'll need a ramp and a plug. -77. All ramps full. You're staying remote on taxiway Kilo for the night. Ground crew will bring stairs and a GPU in 20. Bundle up. Lauren closed her eyes for 1 second. Trap. On the jet. With him. Javier whistled low. Well, Captain. Looks like we're snowed in with Mr. Personality. She unstrapped, stood and squared her shoulders. You're released, Javi. Go home to your wife. I'll stay with the aircraft. And the passenger? I'll handle the passenger. Javier studied her face, saw the tremor she was hiding and simply nodded. Call if you need extraction. I'll bring the National Guard if I have to. 5 minutes later, the ground crew hooked up power, chocked the wheels, and disappeared into the blizzard that was already swallowing the airport lights. Lauren opened the cockpit door. Khalil stood at the back of the cabin, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, pouring hot water from the galley kettle into 2 mugs. The blood on his cheek had been cleaned. A small butterfly bandage now closed the cut. He didn't look up. Coffee or tea? Lauren blinked. What? You've been flying for 7 hours. You're dehydrated and running on adrenaline. Pick one. She hesitated in the doorway, still in her full uniform, hat clutched in her hands like a shield. Tea, she said finally. He dropped a chamomile bag into 1 mug, slid it across the counter toward her, and took his own coffee black. Outside the wind howled. Snow lashed the windows in horizontal sheets. Lauren wrapped both hands around the warm mug but stayed standing. Distance felt safer. Khalil leaned against the opposite counter, arms crossed. Your co-pilot left you here alone with a man you assaulted. Brave woman. He trusts me, she said. Should he? The question hung. Lauren took a slow sip, buying time. I'm not going to hit you again if that's what you're asking. That's not what I'm asking. Silence stretched, filled only by the low hum of the GPU outside and the occasional metallic creak of the fuselage contracting in the cold. Finally she spoke. You could have opened the door and walked off this plane the second we parked. You didn't? Why? Khalil looked out at the whiteout. Because I still haven't decided what to do with you. With me? Or with the 12 people I asked you to spare? Same thing apparently. Lauren set the mug down harder than she meant to. They're not leverage. No, he said quietly. They're your family. I recognized the symptom. Something in his tone made her look closer. He wasn't gloating anymore. He looked hollowed out. She took one involuntary step toward him. What happened to your sister? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Khalil's jaw flexed. For a long moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, Aaliyah. 26 years old. Cardiac event 30 minutes out of Atlanta. Budget airline didn't carry a defibrillator. By the time they diverted, she was gone. His voice was flat, clinical, the way people speak when the story has been told so many times it no longer belongs to them. I was in Tokyo when they called. Couldn't even get to the funeral on time because every commercial flight was delayed. So I started buying planes. Figured if I owned the sky, no one I loved would ever die in it again. Lauren's throat closed. He kept going softer. Turns out money can't buy back the one flight you missed. Snow battered the fuselage like thrown gravel. Lauren's voice came out barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. Don't be better. He met her eyes. That's what I tell myself every day. She laughed once, a broken sound. I was trying to be better. 15 years of swallowing disrespect so I could sit in that left seat. One spilled drink and I became the very thing I hated. Khalil studied her for a long beat. Then he did something that stunned her. He pulled out one of the wide leather seats, turned it to face another, and sat. He gestured to the opposite chair. Sit. It's going to be a long night, and I'm tired of looking up at you like you're on trial. Lauren hesitated, then sat. The blizzard roared outside, sealing them in a cocoon of white noise and warm cabin air. For a minute neither spoke. Then Khalil said, Tell me about Maria and scheduling. The one 3 months from retirement. Lauren's eyes widened. How did you? You said I didn't know their stories. Convinced me I should. So she did. She talked about Maria's husband who died of Alzheimer's last year, how she still set 2 plates at dinner out of habit. About Ramon the flight attendant whose son just started chemo. About Keisha who sends every extra dollar to her mother in Jamaica so she can finally stop cleaning houses. Khalil listened without interrupting, coffee cooling in his hands. When she finished, her voice was raw. They're not perfect. Some of them are petty and tired and say stupid things. But they're mine. And I broke faith with them tonight. Khalil was quiet so long she thought he'd fallen asleep with his eyes open. Then, when I was 12, my mother slapped me in front of the entire block because I talked back to a cop who'd thrown me against a car. Hurt worse than the cuffs. I hated her for 3 days. Then I understood she was terrified I'd end up dead for having a mouth. Sometimes the hand that hits you is the same hand trying to pull you out of the grave. Lauren stared at him, tears threatening again. He continued, I still don't know if tonight you were the cop, or my mother. The cabin lights dimmed automatically to night mode, bathing them in soft gold. Lauren whispered, What happens when we land? Khalil looked out at the storm that showed no sign of stopping. We're not landing anytime soon, he said. So for the next 8 hours, Captain Hayes, you're stuck with a man who can ruin your life, and you're the only person on Earth who knows why he might not want to. He stood, walked to the rear and pulled a blanket from the closet. He draped it over her shoulders without asking, fingers brushing her collarbone for half a second. Then he took the seat across the aisle, stretched out his long legs and closed his eyes. Lauren clutched the blanket, still warm from his hands, and realized the space between them had shrunk to something dangerously close to trust. Outside, the snow kept falling, erasing the world. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever been trapped overnight with someone you thought was your enemy, only to realize they might understand you better than anyone else? Share your story. I need to know I'm not alone in this one. The cabin was almost dark now, just the soft amber glow of the reading lights and the occasional strobe of the anti-collision beacon flashing red across the snow outside. Lauren sat sideways in her seat, legs tucked beneath her, blanket pulled tight like armor. Khalil lay stretched across 2 seats, one arm flung over his eyes. Neither had slept. 3:17 a.m. glowed on the galley clock. Lauren's voice came out of the darkness, small and cracked. I was engaged once. Khalil didn't move, but she felt him listening. His name was Derek. First officer at my old regional. White guy from Connecticut. Thought he was progressive because he dated a black woman. She laughed, bitter and quiet. We were together 3 years. He proposed the same week I got my captain upgrade. Big ring, bigger party. Then the rumors started, how'd she upgrade so fast? Must be nice having a fiancé on the check ride board. She paused. Snow tapped the fuselage like impatient fingers. Derek never defended me. Not once. Said I was being sensitive. 2 months before the wedding he told me maybe I should delay my 4-stripe ceremony so people wouldn't talk. I gave the ring back in the crew lounge at O'Hare. He cried. I didn't. Khalil's arm slid from his face. He stared at the ceiling. Lauren kept going, voice barely above a whisper. After that, every man in a suit who looked through me, every passenger who called me sweetie, every instructor who asked if I was sure I could handle the landing, it all felt like Derek all over again. I built a wall so high I forgot there was a door. She turned her head toward him. Tonight you spilled whiskey on my shoe and I saw red. Because for 1 second you weren't a passenger. You were every single one of them. Silence. Then Khalil spoke, low and rough. I know that wall. He sat up slowly, elbows on knees, and reached into his briefcase. He pulled out a worn leather wallet, opened it, and slid something across the small table between them. A photograph. Edges soft from years of handling. A teenage Khalil, lanky, gap-toothed smile, had his arm around a little girl with thick braids and a hospital bracelet. She was laughing so hard her eyes were slits. Behind them, a woman in a nurse's scrub top beamed at the camera. Khalil's voice was almost inaudible. Aaliyah was born with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Doctors gave her 5 years. She got 26. That picture was taken the day she was accepted to Spelman Early Decision. She died 3 weeks later on a plane coming home to surprise me for my 36th birthday. He touched the photo with one fingertip, tracing the curve of his sister's cheek. I was in a board meeting when the call came. I left 30 investors sitting there and chartered the first jet I could find. Got to the gate 20 minutes too late. They'd already covered her with a blanket. His voice cracked on the last word. I keep buying planes so no one else ever has to feel that kind of helpless. But every time I board one, I still smell that blanket. Lauren's eyes filled so fast the cabin blurred. Khalil looked at her, then really looked, the mask completely gone. I slapped my mother the night Aaliyah died, he said. In the hospital parking lot. I was screaming that she should have made her stay home. My mom just opened her arms and let me hit her until I collapsed. She never hit back. She knew I wasn't hitting her. I was hitting death. He met Lauren's gaze. Tonight you hit me, Lauren. And for the first time in 5 years I felt something other than numb. That's why I didn't walk off this plane. Lauren couldn't breathe. Khalil reached into the seat pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. He loosened the drawstring and let something slide into his palm. A delicate gold bracelet. Tiny airplane charm. One of the links was broken. She was wearing this when they carried her off the plane, he said. I keep it with me on every flight. Stupid superstition. Like if I carry a piece of her, the sky can't take anyone else I love. He held it out, not offering it to her, just letting her see. Lauren stared at the bracelet, then at him, and something inside her chest shattered wide open. She reached into her own blazer pocket with shaking fingers and pulled out a folded square of tissue. Unwrapped it. Inside was an identical gold bracelet, airplane charm, one link broken in exactly the same place. Khalil froze. Lauren's voice trembled. Aaliyah gave this to me. He couldn't speak. She continued, tears sliding down her cheeks. Summer of 2017. I was a brand new flight attendant on Delta Connection. She sat in 2A on my flight from Atlanta to Richmond. We talked the whole way. She told me she wanted to be a lawyer, change the world, never let anyone make her feel small. When we landed she pressed this into my hand and said, "For when you make captain. So you remember the sky is big enough for both of us." I wore it every flight until the day I got my 4th stripe. Then I retired it. Been carrying it in my pocket ever since. Khalil's hand shook so badly the bracelet slipped from his fingers and clinked onto the table. 2 halves of the same broken circle. Lauren whispered, I sat with her for 45 minutes on that ramp while we waited for the coroner. Held her hand. Told her you were coming. She squeezed my fingers once, right at the end. Khalil made a sound like a man who'd been shot. He dropped to his knees in the aisle, forehead pressed to the edge of her seat, shoulders shaking with silent, violent sobs. Lauren slid to the floor beside him, wrapped her arms around his broad back, and held him the way she hadn't been able to hold Aaliyah. They stayed like that until the snow stopped falling and the first pale hint of dawn bled across the horizon. 2 strangers, 1 ghost, and a bracelet that had finally come home. Drop your heart in the comments right now. Have you ever discovered you were connected to someone in a way you never imagined? Tell me. I'm still shaking writing this. The sky outside turned the color of bruised peaches. The storm had passed, leaving the world muffled and brand new. Khalil and Lauren were still on the floor of the aisle, backs against opposite seats, knees almost touching. The 2 broken halves of Aaliyah's bracelet lay between them on the carpet like pieces of a heart someone had dropped. Neither had spoken in 20 minutes. Lauren broke first. Her voice was raw but steady. She told me her big brother was building an empire so she could change the world without ever having to ask permission. A watery laugh. She said you were stubborn, overprotective, and the best man she knew. I thought she was exaggerating. Khalil's eyes were red-rimmed. She always exaggerated about me. She didn't, Lauren whispered. She really didn't. He looked at her, then really looked, as if seeing her for the first time since the slap. Lauren reached out slowly, picked up both pieces of the bracelet, and held them in her open palm. I can have it fixed, she said. There's a jeweler in Georgetown who owes me a favor. Same day. Khalil shook his head. No. Leave it broken. That's honest. He took the pieces from her palm, careful not to touch her skin yet, and slipped them into his pocket. Then he did something that changed everything. He reached across the small space, took her right hand, the one that had struck him, and turned it palm up. The skin was still red from the impact. Very gently, he pressed his lips to the center of her palm, right where she'd hit him. Lauren's breath caught so hard it hurt. He kept his mouth there, eyes closed, as if drawing the violence out of her and into himself so she wouldn't have to carry it anymore. When he finally pulled back, his voice was rough with unshed tears. I forgive you, Lauren Hayes. And I need you to forgive me for the firing text. I never actually wanted to hurt them. I just needed to feel something that wasn't grief for 5 damn minutes. Lauren turned her hand, laced her fingers through his, and squeezed. Already forgiven, she said. We're even. They stayed like that, hands clasped across the aisle, until the cabin filled with soft morning light. Eventually Khalil stood, offered her his hand, and pulled her up. Her legs were asleep, she stumbled into his chest. He steadied her, hands on her waist, and for the first time they let themselves feel how perfectly they fit. Lauren's voice was barely audible against his shirt. I've never told anyone the Derek story. Not even my mother. I've never told anyone about the blanket, he answered into her hair. She pulled back just enough to see his face. What do we do with this, Khalil? He brushed a stray tear from her cheek with his thumb. We start by not letting sunrise be the end of it. A small, shaky smile tugged at her mouth. Breakfast. He laughed, the first real laugh she'd heard from him, low and surprised, like he'd forgotten he knew how. Breakfast, he agreed. But first, coffee that isn't brewed at 39,000 feet. He moved to the galley, started pulling out the good beans, the French press he apparently knew was hidden behind the instant packets. Lauren watched him, still in her rumpled uniform, hat long lost somewhere on the floor, and felt something loosen inside her chest that had been knotted for years. They worked side by side in companionable silence. He ground the beans, she warmed milk. When the press bloomed, the scent filled the cabin like forgiveness. Khalil poured 2 mugs, handed her one, then leaned back against the counter. So, he said, tell me something true, Captain Hayes. Something you've never said out loud. Lauren cradled the mug, thinking. I'm terrified every single time I land, she admitted. Every time. Doesn't matter if it's glass smooth. The second the runway disappears under the nose, I hold my breath until the reversers deploy. I just never let anyone see. Khalil nodded like that made perfect sense. Your turn, she said. He looked out at the snow-covered tarmac, now glowing gold. I still check the manifest for her name before every flight, he said quietly. Every single one. Like one day she'll sneak on and surprise me. Lauren set her mug down, stepped close, and wrapped her arms around his waist from behind. He went very still, then covered her hands with his. They stood like that while the coffee cooled and the airport slowly woke up around them. Finally he turned in her arms, cupped her face with both hands, and rested his forehead against hers. I don't want to get off this plane and go back to being strangers, he whispered. Then don't, she whispered back. He kissed her then, slow, deliberate, tasting of coffee and salt and 5 years of grief finally finding somewhere safe to land. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Lauren laughed through fresh tears. What? He asked, thumb brushing her lip. I slapped a billionaire, she said. And now I'm kissing him in the galley of his own jet. My mother is going to need smelling salts. Khalil grinned, the smile transforming his whole face. I'll buy her the good ones. Lavender imported from France. Lauren rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady and strong. Outside, the first snowplow rumbled past, carving a path through the white. Inside, 2 broken people were carefully, stitching themselves back together with nothing but truth, coffee, and the quiet certainty that some connections are written long before we ever meet. Comment below right now, I'm begging you. When was the moment you knew someone was going to matter forever? That 1 second where everything tilted? Tell me yours. I just lived mine writing this. The sun was fully up now, turning the snow into a blinding mirror. Ground crew had finally cleared a path. The jet stairs were down. A black Suburban idled at the bottom, exhaust curling in the frigid air. Khalil stood at the open door, coat on, phone in hand, thumb hovering over a number he hadn't called in 5 years. Lauren came up behind him, hair in a fresh braid, uniform jacket buttoned, captain once more. Except her eyes were soft in a way no one at Global Wings had ever seen. "I sent the recall on the termination email," he said without turning. "Everyone keeps their jobs. Full back pay for the scare. And a raise. 10% across the board." She exhaled like she'd been holding that breath since takeoff. "Thank you." He finally faced her. "Thank them. You fought for them. I just pressed a button." Lauren stepped closer, reached for his hand. "Come with me to operations. I want you to meet them. Maria, Ramon, Keisha. Let them see the man who gave them their lives back." Something flickered across his face. Panic, maybe? "I can't," he said too quickly. Lauren frowned. "Why?" He looked past her, down the aisle. They'd rebuilt each other in only hours ago. "My mother is landing on a commercial flight from Chicago in 40 minutes. I'm picking her up. I haven't seen her since Aaliyah's funeral. She doesn't even know I own half the airport she's landing at." Lauren's heart tilted. "Khalil. I was going to tell her everything," he continued, voice thin. "About the company, the money, the planes. Then last night happened and I realized I don't want to tell her any of it if the first thing she hears is that her son let a woman hit him and then fell in love with her 12 hours later." The word love hung between them like a live wire. Lauren's throat closed. "Is that what this is?" Khalil met her eyes, raw and terrified. "I don't know what else to call it when someone knows the worst thing you've ever done and the worst thing that ever happened to you, and still chooses to hold your hand on the floor of an airplane." He took one step down the stairs, then stopped. "I need to do this alone, Lauren. I need to know I can stand in front of the woman who buried her daughter and not hide behind the empire I built to outrun the guilt." Lauren felt the distance growing with every word. "So where does that leave us?" she asked, hating how small her voice sounded. Khalil looked like a man watching his own heart walk away. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I know if I drag you into this reunion before I've earned the right to bring someone home to my mother, I'll hate myself more than I already do." The driver in the Suburban honked once, impatient. Khalil started down the stairs. Lauren's panic rose like floodwater. "Khalil." He turned on the third step, eyes pleading. "Give me 1 day. Just one. Let me fix what I broke with her first. Then I'll come find you. I swear on Aaliyah's bracelet, I will come find you." Lauren wrapped her arms around herself to keep from reaching for him. "What if one day becomes never?" she whispered. He climbed back up 2 steps, cupped her face with both hands and kissed her like it was the last time. "Then you'll know I wasn't brave enough to deserve you," he said against her lips. And then he was gone, down the stairs into the Suburban, taillights disappearing through the snow like red eyes closing. Lauren stood in the doorway until the cold bit through her uniform and her tears froze on her cheeks. She walked back inside, closed the door and slid down it until she sat on the floor, same spot they'd cried together only hours ago. The cabin still smelled like coffee and cedar and him. She pulled out her phone. One new email. From HR. Subject: urgent, meeting with ownership, 1400 today. She stared at it until the screen went black. Then she opened the crew group chat and typed. "Everyone, meeting at 2 p.m. in the main briefing room. Ownership wants to talk. I don't know what's coming. But whatever it is, we face it together." She hit send, then turned the phone face down. The bracelet was gone from her pocket. He still had both pieces. She pressed her empty palm to her chest and felt the bruise blooming where her heart used to be. Outside, the plows kept clearing runways, making way for planes that would take people anywhere but here. Inside, Lauren Hayes, the woman who never cried on the job, curled into a ball on the galley floor and sobbed until there was nothing left but the sound of engines winding down and a future she no longer recognized. "Comment right now, I need you with me." Have you ever watched someone you love walk away because they weren't ready to be loved yet? Did they come back? I'm not okay after writing this one. 2:07 p.m. Global Wings Charter Main Briefing Room, Reagan National. 23 crew members sat in stunned silence. Some still wore yesterday's uniforms. Some had kids' car seats in the hallway because childcare had fallen through when the termination rumor hit. Lauren stood at the front, for stripes gleaming under fluorescent lights, eyes red but spine straight. The side door opened. Khalil walked in alone. No lawyers, no assistants. Just him in a charcoal coat, snow still clinging to the shoulders. Every head turned. He didn't look at the room. He looked only at Lauren, and the apology in his eyes nearly buckled her knees. He stopped 3 feet from her. "I owe every single one of you an apology," he said, voice carrying without a microphone. "Last night I weaponized fear because I was hurting. That stops now." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a stack of envelopes. "Inside these are new contracts. 15% raise effective today. Full medical for dependents, no premiums. College funds for every child under 18. And a written guarantee. No one in this room will ever be fired without my personal sign-off and a face-to-face explanation." Gasps rippled through the room. Maria, the scheduler 3 months from retirement, started crying so hard her shoulders shook. Khalil kept his eyes on Lauren. "But first, I need to say this in front of the people you protected with your body last night." He took one more step. "I was a coward this morning," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "I walked away from the only person who ever saw all of me and still chose to stay. I told myself I was doing it to protect her. Truth is, I was terrified I wasn't enough without the money, the planes, the power. That if I showed up as just Khalil, you'd realize you deserved better." Lauren's breath trembled. Khalil dropped to one knee right there on the industrial carpet in front of 23 witnesses. He pulled the velvet pouch from his pocket, opened it, and let the repaired bracelet slide into his palm. The broken link had been replaced with a tiny, perfect gold airplane. "I had it fixed," he said, voice cracking. "But I left the new link bright on purpose. So every time we look at it, we remember healing isn't pretending the break never happened. It's choosing to make something stronger where it shattered." He held it up to her. "Lauren Hayes, I don't want to own the sky anymore if you're not flying it with me. I'm not asking you to forgive me again. I'm asking you to let me spend the rest of my life earning the forgiveness you already gave me for free." The room was so quiet you could hear snow melting off his coat. Lauren stared at him, tears sliding unchecked. Then she whispered, "Get up." Khalil froze. She stepped forward, took the bracelet from his palm, and clasped it around her own wrist. The gold airplane caught the light. "You don't get to kneel," she said, voice shaking but fierce. "You get to stand next to me. Ickle. Always." She offered her hand. He took it and rose. The room erupted, cheers, sobs, applause that rattled the windows. Khalil didn't look away from her. "I love you," he said, only for her. "I loved you the second you slapped me and hated myself for it. I loved you when you defended strangers with your whole career. I loved you when you held me while I cried over a sister you never met. I'm done running." Lauren's answer was to fist her hand in his coat, pull him down, and kiss him in front of God and every soul who'd ever doubted either of them. When they broke apart, foreheads still touching, she laughed through happy tears. "My mother really is going to need those smelling salts." Khalil grinned. "I already chartered her AG 700 home. First-class treatment. She thinks she's being upgraded because her son finally made something of himself. Wait till she meets the reason." Maria stood up, walked straight to them and hugged them both so hard Lauren squeaked. "Captain," she said, voice thick, "you hit the jackpot, baby. And I'm never retiring now. Someone's got to keep you two in line." Laughter rolled through the room like medicine. Khalil turned to the crew, arms still around Lauren's waist. "Meeting adjourned. Go home. Hug your kids. Cash those checks. And know that this company now belongs to every single one of you as much as it belongs to me." He looked down at Lauren. "Except the left seat of N898KE, he added softly. "That one's hers forever." Later, when the room emptied and the snow had started again outside the windows, they stood alone. Lauren touched the new gold airplane on her wrist. "So what happens now, Mr. Ellison?" Khalil brushed a braid from her face. "Now I take you to dinner. Then I take you home. Then I spend every day for the rest of our lives proving that love at 41,000 feet isn't turbulence. It's the smoothest ride either of us will ever have." He kissed her once more, slow and certain. Outside, the plows carved fresh paths through the snow. Inside, two hearts that had learned to fly alone finally chose to fly together. "Comment your heart out, I'm begging you. When did you finally choose the love you were terrified to believe in? Tell me. I need to know happy endings still happen." 6 months later. Late September, golden hour over Teterboro. The same Gulfstream G700, tail number N898KE, sat freshly painted. The old Global Wings livery was gone. In its place, a deep midnight blue cheat line, and just forward of the door, 2 small gold silhouettes, one captain's hat and one tiny airplane charm, intertwined like a promise. Inside, the cabin smelled of fresh orchids and new leather. Every seat held someone Lauren and Khalil loved. Maria, officially retired but refusing to leave, sat up front dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Ramon's son, now cancer-free, bounced in 3A wearing a miniature pilot uniform Lauren had made for him. Keisha's mother, finally moved from Jamaica, clutched a tissue and kept whispering, "Look at my baby girl flying the big jet." Khalil stood at the rear in a perfectly tailored midnight blue tux, no tie, top button undone the way Lauren loved. He was trying and failing to look calm. Lauren was still in the cockpit finishing her pre-flight. The door opened. Javier stepped out first, grinning like a proud big brother, then turned and offered his hand. Lauren took it and emerged. The cabin went dead silent. She wore a simple off-the-shoulder white silk gown that caught the sunset pouring through the windows and turned her into living fire. 4 gold stripes were embroidered along the hem, because she refused to take them off even for one day. On her wrist, Aaliyah's bracelet gleamed, the new gold airplane bright against the older links. In her free hand she carried her captain's hat, not to wear, but to place on the seat that would always be hers. Khalil's breath left him in a rush. He had seen her command hurricanes, had seen her cry on the galley floor, had seen her naked in candlelight and sunrise and every beautiful moment in between. He had never seen her like this. Lauren walked the aisle slowly, eyes locked on him, every step a vow. When she reached him, she set the hat gently on the fold-out table between them, the same table where the broken bracelet had once lain. Then she took both his hands. The officiant, Captain Hayes's own mother, who had earned her minister's license online just for this moment, cleared her throat. "Family, friends, crew, because that's what we are gathered today inside the very aircraft where these 2 stubborn souls tried to destroy each other and accidentally built a life instead." Soft laughter rippled. "Normally I'd ask who gives this woman. But my daughter gave herself the day she slapped a billionaire and then refused to let him walk away." More laughter, louder this time. "So instead," her mother continued, eyes twinkling, "I'm going to ask the question that matters. Khalil Amir Ellison, do you take this woman, in turbulence and in smooth air, in 39,000 feet and on the ground, in wealth and in whatever comes after, to be your lawful wedded wife, your co-pilot, your home?" Khalil's voice did not waver. "I have waited my entire life for a safe place to land. She is my runway, my horizon, and every star I navigate by. I do. Forever." Lauren's mother turned to her. "And you, Lauren Denise Hayes, do you take this man, who owns half the sky but gave you the other half, to be your lawful wedded husband, your first officer on the bad days, your captain on the good ones, and the reason you never have to fly alone again?" Lauren looked up at him, eyes shining. "The first time I saw him, I thought he was just another entitled passenger. Turns out he was the destination I didn't know I was cleared for. I do. With everything I am and everything I'm still becoming." Her mother grinned. "Then by the power vested in me by the internet and a whole lot of love, I pronounce you husband and wife. Captain, you may kiss your groom." Lauren laughed through happy tears, grabbed Khalil by the lapels and kissed him like the first time, like the last time, like every time in between. The cabin exploded, cheers, whistles, Ramon's son yelling, "Gross," and then immediately asking for cake. Khalil only broke the kiss when he absolutely had to breathe. He rested his forehead against hers. "Captain Ellison," he whispered, testing it. "First Officer Ellison," she whispered back, grinning. "Don't get cocky. I still have more hours than you." They turned to their people, their family, and were immediately swallowed in hugs and champagne and tears. Later, after the cake, red velvet, Aaliyah's favorite, had been cut in the galley, after toast that left no eye dry, after the sun dipped below the horizon and the cabin lights glowed soft gold, Khalil pulled Lauren into the quiet of the cockpit. The door closed behind them. Outside the windshield, the runway lights stretched into the night like a promise. Khalil reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet box. Lauren raised an eyebrow. "We're already married, sir." "Hush, woman." He opened it. Inside lay a new charm for her bracelet, a tiny, perfect Gulfstream jet, engraved on the underside with today's date and the coordinates of Teterboro. He fastened it next to the airplane Aaliyah had given her all those years ago. "Now it's complete," he said softly. "Past, present, future. All on the same circle." Lauren touched it with one finger, then looked up at him. "I have something for you too." She reached into the small pocket of her gown and pulled out a brand new set of 4 gold stripes, captain's bars, but these were different. Etched into the metal were tiny words only visible up close. "Property of Lauren Ellison. Return if found." She pinned them to the inside of his tux jacket, right over his heart. "Because you're not a passenger anymore," she said. "Your crew." "My crew." Khalil's eyes filled. He pulled her into his lap in the left seat, her seat, and wrapped his arms around her from behind. On the center console sat a framed photo, the two of them on their wedding day laughing in the galley with Aaliyah's original picture tucked into the corner. Lauren reached forward and flipped the cockpit lights to dim. Then she pressed the PA, even though everyone was already on board and listening. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. From the left seat of N898KE, on behalf of my husband and my crew, welcome aboard the rest of our lives. Flight time is forever. Skies are clear. And for the first time in either of our histories, there is absolutely nothing to fear." She clicked off the PA, turned in his arms and kissed him slow and deep while the jet sat quiet beneath them. No engines, no rush, just the soft hum of a life finally perfectly on the ground. Outside, the runway lights twinkled like a million little yes. Inside, two people who once believed love was something that happened to other people discovered it had been taxiing behind them all along, waiting for clearance to take off together. And somewhere, in whatever place watches over broken bracelets and second chances, Aaliyah smiled the biggest smile the sky had ever seen. When was the moment you realized love wasn't the exception? It was the destination all along. Drop it below. And if this story made you cry, laugh, or believe again, share it with someone who needs to remember that even the worst beginnings can have the most beautiful landings. Thank you for flying with us. Come back tomorrow. The sky's big enough for all of us.